your head up, right with me, let's go. Keep your ears up and listen to me, let's go. Keep your head up, right with me, let's go. Keep your ears up,
Who's
listen
down
to me,
with
let's go. Keep your head
TTP? Who's down with TTP? You down with TTP? Who's down with TTP? Hey, real quick, here comes the breakdown. All right, all right, all right. What up, what up, what up? So, if you see my face, you know the place. You know what time it is. It is Trust the Plus, also known as TTP. Alright? And as always, the man who stands before you, if you do not know by now, is the MICCASTERJ. That's me, the Mike Caster. Alright? So, one, and let me turn that down. As if you guys can hear me, the mic's a little powerful now, so forgive me. But yeah, man. Uh, I know I said I was gonna turn around and make this video um during over the Christmas time, but anyone who saw when I made that post probably already realistically looked at that and was like, "All right, yeah, all right." That wasn't going down. So it is New Year, start fresh, new video, and what we are going over is trauma bringing drama. Yup, that is our title for this one. Trauma bringing drama. So, and if you don't know, I always like doing this because it's like a little gag and a little jab I like doing. And if you don't know by the title, we're talking about trauma. So, as you can also see, the video setup's a little bit different. So, this time instead of the phone, I'm using my computer. All right, so I can kind of be more centered this way versus I'm trying. We're trying to get it together. I'm trying to make this. Trying to make this look a little bit like something, man. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But anyway, so yeah, it was a busy it was a busy Christmas time anyway. You know, turn around and enjoy my anniversary. Watch my cousin get married. Like it was a lot of blessings, man. Hanged with my son and stuff. Spend time with the family. So it was pretty cool, man. So I don't regret taking the break. But now that we back, now that we in this, let's go. Let's get to it. Let's get into meat and potatoes, all right? So switching gears, um, yeah, we're going into trauma, man. So that's definitely something that's synonymous with the winter season. Um, whether it's having to deal with death, whether it's a particular uh, unkindling moments that you don't want to recall that has happened during Christmas times and stuff, we're gonna go into all of that. But before we do all of that, you already know, gotta talk about the definition. So I got two for you. All right. So trauma usually relates to deeply distressing or disturbing experience. All right. So that's definition one. Definition two is more of a physical injury, because that's also another form of trauma, injury. So, trauma can be one of two ways. It could be more psychological, or it could be more physical, but both of them can mess with you and create triggers. And we're just going to kind of delve into that a bit. So, that being said, the initial way um, that trauma tends to really turn around and enter into your life as we transition is through overwhelmingly negative events. So, um, these is not necessarily the negative portion that um that trauma turnaround enters from. It's more of the lasting concept. So there's an impact that it had on you that affected your stability, whether it did it physically, whether it did it emotionally, it doesn't matter. But it latches onto that, and that becomes trauma. So the overwhelmingness of that negative event, as it's, as my notes turn around say, and as I done the research and looked at the overwhelming negative results of this event, is, that affected your stability, whether mentally, emotionally, is what creates that latch from trauma, which allows trauma to enter in. Um, and then, like I said, trauma, while always being in the physical nature, can also be in the psychological nature. And some of the common ways that can enter into that as we turn around and move forward down the line is ways like rape. People hear trauma, you immediately think about rape, right? You think about domestic violence. You got natural disasters, severe illness or injury. As I said, it can also be injuries or sicknesses that do it. Death of a loved one. As I told you, we're in the winter season. And as I said in the video in the past, winter season's heavy for me. I've lost a lot of people in the winter. So, you know, although this comes with a time of blessings and, rejoicing, it also comes with a little bit of, just that thought process of, cheers that are empty now, people who weren't there, um, things that have happened in the past. So, all that, if you're not careful, can bring in that trauma. Uh, Witnessing an act of violence can also turn around and create trauma. And then you got other stuff that people don't really think about. So, like, one-time events such as an accident, a violent attack, Um, another good one that they have is childhood. Something happening during your childhood that was, unexpected. Um, or ongoing relentless stress. So, boom, there goes that stress word. So, stress can also bring forth trauma, such as like living in a bad neighborhood, battling life threatening illnesses again, or, stuff like bullying or neglect, for, my people who didn't really grow up with very loving parents, or, you fell into that you know, scenario that some of us have turned around and fell into where, one parent kind of checked out and the other one stayed. And that seems to be where life kind of directed a lot at certain points. And it's unfortunate, but all that stuff can create trauma. Case in point, I know that happened for me when my parents split. And although I tried to internalize it, it did create a bit of trauma because it changed and reformed a lot of what I knew because of this overwhelmingly negative event that impacted my mental and emotional stability. So I just want to turn around and show you what that what that kind of looks like. So that's definitely something I've gone through. Um, and then look over here, because I got commonly overlooked causes. So commonly overlooked causes that could create trauma into your life is, like I said, sudden death of someone close, breakup with somebody, significant breakup. Went through that. It took me a minute to turn around and recatch myself because I devoted so much of my time into this person that when they initially felt they were done with me and didn't really think nothing about it, moved on, I wasn't able to do the same. So, stuff like that can be hard because it can be like humiliating or deeply disappointing, as the words that they actually use inside here. Um, or just flat out cruel. Like I said, we're talking about really, it has to be impactful. So these are type of words that would be really impactful. No one likes being humiliated. No one likes being disappointed, and nobody likes cruelty. And then when you experience that, it hits the body. The mind, your spirit reacts differently to that. Um, you also have an unstable, unsafe environment, separation from parents, which I went over, which I just talked about. Again, serious illness, intrusive medical procedures. Some people who went through a really hard surgery and you know, the surgery was a success, but there's still things that you can't do now because of that surgery. that can cause trauma. Sexual, physical, or verbal abuse. Again, any type of abuse is abuse, and it can still cause trauma. Don't matter whether they touched you or not. Um, so those are some of the ways that it enters, and as you can see, going into that, those are all uncomfortable things. Those are all really highly impactful stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that trauma hits after that, because those are not things that you just recover from. You don't just turn around and come into a domestic situation to come out of it and go, oh, all right, well, that's done. That's not how that happens. You don't just your parents don't just separate, and you have to choose between two sides, and dealing with only seeing this one at a specific point, and just be like, well, life is normal again. That's not how that works. Um, so from that, of course, we always, when we talk about entering, we're going to go into types. And I'm going to kind of break this down really simple. When it comes to types, you got your emotional and psychological trauma. That's your types, man. So again, they all result from stressful events. They're meant to shatter your sense of security. Um, they're also kind of meant to make you feel helpless, and that's the pivotal point of trauma, kind of making you feel like you have no control over this event, and that's where that impactfulness comes from. So it kills your mind. And again, that stability that it kills it because it takes away your security. That's what trauma does. It tries to take away that confidence, that sureness of yourself, that I can handle this, or I'm on top of this, and when you're not, and stuff really spirals out of control, and things happen that really just, for lack of a better term, just really go south. It affects you differently because it makes you feel helpless. And, feeling helpless definitely is a quick way to kind of enter into that psychological state of, trauma, which, again, as it says here, can leave you struggling with upset emotions, memories, and anxiety that won't go away. So it replays a constant moment in your brain where it's your brain's trying to still process what happened and why we couldn't work around it, why you couldn't revolve it, why what you did that created the situation. You immediately start playing these blame games, or you start going through those 7 stages and stuff that you hear all the time, like denial and all that. um that 7 stage thing is also kind of a form of trauma. It's associated to that. But it can also feel you leaving numb. It can leave you disconnected. It can leave you very untrusting. So when you kind of feel your security taken away, it kind of makes you look at everything differently. So you start closing up. So again, going back to your plus, that North Star. Now you're turning internalizing. You're crushing that inner version of yourself. So now you're no longer a project outward anymore. You don't want to put yourself out there no more. You want to trust people. You want to put people up in your anchors. You want to create goals and stuff, because all of that now makes you feel like you're exposing yourself to potentially going through this again. Um, and then, of course, traumatic experiences often involve a threat to life. But uh, as I said before, and as this says, any situation to where you feel overwhelmed and you feel isolated and alone, again, that security taken away, even if it doesn't cause you harm, can create trauma. It's as simple as that. It's just, again, that security. Once it's gone and that confidence is crushed, and you no longer feel in a trusting sense, or you no longer feel like you can really navigate anymore, that's where you're in that trauma zone. Um, so I guess the best word to turn around and use for it is trauma gets you when you feel frightened. It's when you feel frightened. So it keeps you in that flight scenario. So now all you want to do is constantly flight, 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 flight. There's no fight in you. It's flight or flight. Now you instantly flight now. So that's what trauma tries to do. It tries to get you into quick flight mode. So your whole mechanism is, if it's a immediate uncomfortable situation, you're running. If it remotely puts you in a situation where you have to be around other people, or things that kind of associated to what led to that first overwhelming event, you're gone. So it really tries to mess with you, and it really tries to make you internalize, and it really tries to isolate you. Um, because especially if you've dealt with stuff that are scenarios that others have not dealt with, so no one, you feel like no one can relate to you. You feel like it mainly happened to you, and it's your fault, and no one ain't gonna understand, or all this, that, and the third. It just really puts you down into this weird spiral in your brain where you're just like, no one's gonna get this. I'm all alone in this. And that's a bad place to be in. And we talked about that in some of our other videos, and now we have a similar situation here with trauma. So with that, we're going to transition to the effects. So, emotion is obviously one of the most common ways that trauma affects you. That's how it manifests itself. It has to get you to react and be in this um, heightened sense of your feelings, where you're feeling all kinds of things at once, whether it's anger, denial, sadness. You're just this whole cluster of emotions, and you can't pinpoint which one to feel because your brain is just confused, your mind is just conflicted over the event that you're trying to process. um, and then it it gets to the point where you start associating it to other things that are in your life, um, whether it's friends, family. So that's how you start getting that point where people start trying to be kind of offish when they experience trauma. Um, so that's why it's really difficult to deal with when you're in it. Um, and it causes you to push away a lot. So it's it's really unfortunate. It happens to some people. And my goal in these videos always kind of like, without, I'm not trying to really push off on a tangent, but my goal in these videos is always kind of help navigate. It's not that you're gonna be immune to this stuff, but if I can at least help people navigate through these type of struggles, or at least identify when you are going through it, because sometimes we may not realize it, um, then that's cool. I kind of feel like I'm helping people in a way. So I hope these videos are doing that for you. Um, so yeah, going back to it. So yeah, trauma can also manifest itself physically, as we also talked about. Um, and when I say physically, I mean it can show signs that actually, start affecting you body wise, or they can be displayed on the outside if people pay attention enough. Like paleness, uh, they got lethargy, fatigue, poor concentration, racing heartbeat. Again, if you notice a pattern with these triggers, all of them want to turn around and attack your heart. His end game is to completely kill you over. It's crazy. Because we're in 5 videos, and this is the 5th video where we're still talking about it attacking your heart rate. Um, but anyway, yeah, so you can get anxiety. So now you get another trigger. You can get panic attacks. You can get to this point where you're unable to, assess the situations as quickly as you would, because everything's always sending off red flags, red flags, red flags, red flags. Um, and it can be real hard to deal with others around, or real hard for people to turn around and navigate with you in those moments. Um, so that's where those effects start kind of playing into other things, other aspects in your life, like your branches, or your above alls, or and your anchors, or the things that keep you grounded. You know, so you definitely got to take into account your stress levels when it comes to trauma. So emotional, physical symptoms. I'm just gonna shout them out. I'm not gonna delve too much into it. It is you got shock, you got denial, you got disbelief, you got confusion, difficulty concentrating, anger, irritability, mood swings, anxiety and fear, guilt and shame, which is heavily associated with it, and is often sought in people that are usually victims of rape. They just kind of feel like they can't look at themselves the same way. And again, that creates that isolation feeling, withdrawing from others, see, feeling sad or hopeless, feeling disconnected or numb. And then for physical symptoms, you got insomnia, you got nightmares from people with PTSD, which is another form of trauma. Reenacting, reliving that same moment, not coming out of it. Your brain just flashes back to it randomly. That could create nightmares. You know, we said fatigue, being startled easily, difficulty concentrating, racing heartbeat, edginess, agitation, aches and pains, muscle tension. Because again, you're in flight mode, so you're constantly in that. Remember. I don't know if you looked at any of the other videos, I talked about what happens when the body's always in this adrenaline state and how that's unhealthy because it has nowhere to release that energy. So you're just holding on to that. So just picture you just kind of standing like a statue and you're just stiffening all your muscles like this the whole entire time, all day long, all the time. Yeah, that's going to do damage on the body. So those are the ways in which it affects you. And of course, when we talk about effect, we got to turn around and talk about how to deal with it, right? So, I wanted to get to this part because it kind of breaks it down into different motions. So I wanted to make sure I had enough time to kind of break those in. Because when people hear trauma, they immediately talk about, oh, he's going to talk about therapy and stuff. No, I I want to kind of take it into a different direction. So I wanted to make sure I had enough time to do that. So, when it comes to trauma, something you can do is exercise. However, the way that this stuff talks about exercising is a way people don't really think about it. And that is spending 10 minutes not just doing exercise, like not just trying to throw weights up or something like that, but doing rhythmic exercise, doing exercise that gets your mind to concentrate. Um, even if it's in sports related type stuff. So, stuff like where you can use both your arms and legs is how they kind of refer to it. So, such as walking, something simple as walking, running, swimming, basketball, even dancing, getting yourself into this rhythmic zone that takes you out of that place, which is especially great for people who kind of have those flashes of those traumatic events. Isolating your mind on something helps you from going back and switching into that gear again or having one of those episodes when you can show yourself that you're still here. You're here, you're in the moment, and that event, as tragic and as painful as it was, has passed. It's a passing moment in your life. You're no longer in that place. All right, what has happened, and it doesn't mean forget it, but it definitely means you can't sit in there because once you sit in there, that's where trauma has you. That's where you're in that isolation. So finding ways to just isolate your mind off of that. So exercising with a purpose, doing something whether, so it's kind of like curling, doing jumping jacks, just doing something where you have rhythmic movements, you're engaging yourself. Um, And then they also have stuff like adding a mindfulness element. So instead of focusing your thoughts on distracting yourself while you exercise, focus on your body, focus on the movements of your body. So like when I like to turn around do exercise, if I'm curling, I'm looking at myself curl. And I'm not doing that to be facetious or turn around and be cocky or conceited. I'm concentrating on the movement I'm doing, the areas I want to target, where I want to focus my exercise at. And that's great. That's a great way of doing it versus trying to just sit here and work out, pump in music, and then just try and hopefully hope the best that you're distracted enough. No, man, like really get into what you're doing. So same way your brain takes the time to isolate you, thinking back and reflecting on the moment. Now use that in a positive way and reflect on what you're doing right now in this moment. Um, you know, they describe it as feel how your body moves. Again, keeping yourself in place. The more you can keep yourself in the present, the less your mind retracts back to the past. So it's just kind of like a coping mechanism, learning how to move forward, but but actually giving you way forward versus just telling you move on. Because a lot of people have bad habits to tell people who went through trauma that, move on. And that's unhealthy. Because, it's very hard to do that. So just kind of saying that is a little insensitive. But, actually giving people a way forward. So, hey, find this, use this to concentrate on this, use this to kind of create a habit that takes you out of that zone. That's a lot more helpful than just simply just telling someone to get over it. Um, Another thing that it turns around is connecting with others, okay? You don't have to talk about the trauma. That's another mistake people make. They're like connecting with others all immediately means I have to talk about it. No, don't talk about it. If that's really, especially if that's probably part of the problem right now because you're not ready for those conversations, no, find people to connect with that are not going to focus on that. Your friends who like to talk about everything other than that. If you got somebody who likes to go on and on about one subject, connect with that person. That one person who gets overly excited about talking about like sneakers. And he's gonna tell you every sneaker under the sun. Connect with that person. That's an entirely great conversation. It's just gonna make you feel great. You can laugh, you can talk, you can enjoy in that person's joy of what or the enthusiasm. And you don't have to feel like you're everyone's staring at you. All the attention is on that person, not you, because that's part of what makes people feel uncomfortable about talking. They feel like everyone, at some degree, is still thinking about what happened to that person or wants them to talk about it. And it even says here, in fact, it can make it worse when you just talk about trauma. So no, find comforting feelings. Find feelings that where you feel engaged and accepted by other people, not forced to relive or talk about an experience that you're not ready to have conversations about. Um, Another thing that it turned around and says is it is important to have someone to share your feelings with. So when you do get to that point, and you want to make sure it's somebody who's trusting. So again, you're above all. Remember we talked about in those anchors. So that would be more than likely someone you want to come to. Someone when you are in that mode where you want to talk about it, that will just listen. They're not judging you. They're not going to turn around and formulate opinions. They're not going to sit here and try and overanalyze and tell you all the stuff that you should have done to next time and all that stuff like that, because all that's unhealthy. They're just simply, they love you enough to just let you get it off your chest. All right. Another thing that they talk about is, participate in social activities even if you don't feel like it, because again, that isolation. So get yourself this part you are going to have to turn around and kind of it's going to take a little bit of willpower and maturity on your level on this part, to push yourself to get into social activities. Because again, once we get so used to the isolation of trauma, it gets harder for us to turn around and reach back out to get into that trusting part. So you're going to have to jump in. That's something that you can't tiptoe around it. So you got to put yourself back into the community. All right. That means reconnecting with friends or even join support groups with trauma survivors. You are not the only one who went through trauma. I know people hear that and it sounds like someone's trying to, knock off what your pain was, but that's not necessarily what that means. There's other people who went through it. Connect with those people. Someone might have already been went through the same thing you went through and already found the basis or the steps to at least process forward. And they can help you get more of those steps than somebody who just doesn't understand does. Because they can reach to you differently. They can meet you where you're at. Versus trying to rush you or trying to do all the other extra pacing that other people do that don't understand, that haven't gone through that. They'll have a little bit more patience, a little bit more understanding, in that regards. You know, volunteer, definitely volunteer because we talk about getting yourself back into the present. So volunteering is another way to do that. You know, and helping other people because it makes you feel good, it makes you think of something other than what happened. All right, and it takes away the helplessness because now when you're doing something for others, you can't sit here and think that you're not an inclusive part of your community no more, or that you're less than third, or that you're not worth anything now because of what happened to you, because you're making a difference. Breathing is one thing, getting plenty of sleep. Your sleep patterns definitely affect you because the more you're up, the longer you're up at night, the more you stay isolated. The longer you're isolated, the more that worry and fear creates disturbing habits. That's how you get those nightmares and stuff, and trauma affects you all over again. Um, and then, of course, as always, avoid alcohol and drugs, man. And again, with alcohol, I say loosely as, don't just start hitting the bottle after this, stuff like this happen because it worsens it. I told you, alcohol affects the synapses in the brain that turn around and creates uh, an increase of those emotions that you're thinking that you're using it to try and wash down, for lack of a better term. It's not doing that, it's heightening it. So it's doing the total opposite. And again, eating a well balanced meal, because again, when you feel good uh, here in the body, it also starts affecting the brain the same way, and then reducing stress. And then, of course, I do have some therapies to share with you, but it's not therapies that you think. So one is called the somatic experience. So, it focuses on body sensations rather than thoughts and memories about traumatic events. You can concentrate on what's happening with your body. Um, you can release pent up trauma related energy through shaking, crying, and other forms of physical release. So it just gets you to take all those things that are usually triggers that put you back into those episodes and experience them. Let you just do it. Let your body do what it's doing, but at least put you here in this moment now. Now you're no longer reflecting back and it's flashing you back. Now you're just here in this moment. You're grieving, for lack of a better term. You're releasing it out. Then you got cognitive behavioral therapy, which people always know. That's the one where they help you process and evaluate your thoughts and feelings about a trauma. So that's the one where they kind of make you confront it, because the realistic nature of this um, is, yeah, you can pace it, but at some point, everybody, at some point when it comes to trauma, you have to face exactly what you dealt with. So at some point, you got to talk about it. At some point, you got to address the fact that you happened. At some point, you got to allow yourself to turn around and be upset, cry, grieve, be mad about it, instead of just sitting here and thinking that you can go through life just shaking it off. Like that's not gonna happen, yo. So um, that's one of the other therapies that you can do. And you have one called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So that actually incorporates elements of cognitive behavioral therapy with eye movements or other forms of rhythmic left-right simulation that can unfreeze traumatic memories. Again, it's all these those episodes because that's what's associated a lot with trauma. It's all about trying to take you back into the moment. But the more you can focus, create those rhythms, put yourself back into the presence, understand that you survived, you are here. What happened was unfortunate, but it didn't kill you. It didn't take you away. It didn't create an end game for you. It might have had certain repercussions that, yeah, you got to turn around and live with, but at the end of the day, you still being there shows that it did not remove you. It was not enough to take you out of the picture, to take you out of this world, to to you know completely destroy you. So if you can still breathe, you can still be here, you can still blink, you are not broken. And that's an important thing for people with trauma to hear. You are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not less than because you got raped. You're not you're not trash because your partner abused you. So you're beneath other people. You're not you're not terrible for having been in an accident, a car accident, whether you were on the phone or not. And there's lapse of judgment happens. All right, it's unfortunate. It led to a a major critical event with that lapse of judgment, but at the same time, it's still a normal process. Because if nothing really major overwhelming that came from it, you would think nothing of it. But it's the fact that it came to higher level consequences. That's the part that makes you kind of go back and regress and go, man, did I deserve that? And no, the answer is a resounding no. You did not deserve that. I don't care what kind of person you were. Nobody deserves a traumatic event, period, at all. So, taking yourself out of the moment and not finding ways to victim blame yourself, which would usually happen for people who go through traumatic events, is highly important. Okay. And then, of course, as always, can't end this without turning around and throwing in some godly advice from the scripture. Because again, it's trust a plus. It's a cross. I am a firm believer in God, so I'm going to throw some words to you. You take it, you don't take it. I would love for you to take it, because I love you. Lord loves you, and I still see you as a brother, sister in Christ. Regardless of what side of the fence you are. And our verse comes from 2 Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Sound mind. All right. So he did not give us fear. That is not one of the inhibitors of God. I know you've heard all this stuff. I know everyone likes to quote the old testimonies and God's wrath coming down like fire and all that. No, God did not give us fear. All right. At the end of the day, He's a loving God, which means He instilled love in you. All right. So when it comes to these traumatic events, always point towards the love side. Always point towards a sound mind. Remember that power that you have. So despite what happened to you, that traumatic part, that power only leaves you when you let it leave you. So that person who took advantage of you only ended up turning around and winning and taking advantage of you once you gave and relinquished that power. That spouse that abused you only makes you feel less than as a partner when you give them that power. Whether it's whether it's accidents or whether somebody died, suddenly, it it's only as impactful as the power you give it. Which, depending on the events, I know is a process. But at the end of that process, the power that you give it is what makes that traumatic event, not the event itself. It's the power you give it. So keep that sound mind. Remember, you are still loved. Nobody deserves any traumatic events. It's not your fault. It's not some deserving consequence or anything like that. So that's that's the best I can say on that. Because it's even something I had to turn around and tell myself. For some of the traumatic experiences I went through, I went into that whole, man, it's my fault. I did it. I had to turn around. Maybe it's something I could. Maybe if I was better at this. Maybe if I'd done better at this. No, 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 man. It's not you. All right. So that's what I got for trauma. I hope you got something out of this. Um, I know this is a very heavy conversation, so I try to kind of pace it in a certain way. Um, and I hope you guys enjoyed the holidays. I hope you took the time to turn around, be with loved ones and friends, and I hope as you go into this new year, you leave what's in the past, and you know, you take that leap forward. All right. Um, and you take it in the process and the steps that you need to, and you surround yourself with people who are willing to go through that process with you. Other than that, as always, I love you guys. I'm sorry, I don't know which screen to look at because my video thing's over here, but you guys over here, so it's weird. As always, I love you guys. This is Mike Caster with another Trust the Plus episode, and this has been Trauma Bringing Drama for this episode. So, stick with me next Tuesday. We'll be back on the regular schedule with another trigger for you. Other than that, I'm out. Peace. Also, I got my album. That's why I'm doing the plug. I got my album and my single coming out. So I've already started sharing it on Instagram and my pages. But, if you can't, check it out. I got it on SoundCloud right now, but it's going to release on other platforms later on. Very proud of this album. It also is dedicated towards mental triggers. That's what this album is for. Other than that, catch you guys next time. Later.